So far, Southern Baja was living up to the hype. After flying with whale sharks all morning, Rob and I decided to swing through La Paz for a little one-wheel adventure down the Malecon. We stopped for some delicious food, and I learned you can't judge a hot sauce based purely on its color. We arrived at our next beach destination, and I knew it wasn't going to be easy to top flying with whale sharks, which was indeed a special flight, but I must admit, somehow the next few days of flying managed to be my personal favorites of the entire Baja trip. We floated down the mountainous coastline a ways until we reached our lighthouse destination. The air couldn't be any smoother, and just as we were getting comfortable with our new beach, things got a little bit rowdy. I didn't have a camera rolling, but after getting lifted and dropped and flying sideways without making much forward progress, I glanced over at Rob, who shook his head and looked like he was also ready to be back on the ground. But there was only ocean below us, so that really wasn't an option either, and we were forced to trim out and penetrate the gusting winds that were now violently rolling over the surrounding mountains, trying to force us out to sea. Miraculously, we both made it back to dry land before a local informed us about the infamous caramule winds that sweep through the area just before sunset in the spring. This would have been valuable information to have prior to taking off, but it was actually kind of rewarding knowing we had the skill set to get through a sticky situation such as the pirate wind, as we called it. And yes, real-life pirates actually used the sneaky wind to attack Spanish trade ships back in the day. Needless to say, we both earned our Baja-style margaritas, spiked with the local Damiana that night. The next day, we did some off-roading in the Baja Mobile and noticed some peculiar flags that read Rumbo Expedición. We caught sight of some paragliders in the sky, and it turns out the Rumbo expedition was a group doing a guided paramotor trip along the Sea of Cortez, and by some luck, we just happened to cross paths. We helped them set up camp and got to know a few of the pilots before joining them in the sky for a midday flight. Back in the sky once again. I linked up with Joe for this one as we floated towards arguably the prettiest beach in Baja, known as Balandra. The water here was absolutely stunning, and it was really cool seeing so many boats in the bay below. After flying, the Rumbo group invited us to a fancy dinner that evening. We graciously accepted the invite, and I was honored to meet and speak with pilots from all over the world. We each introduced ourselves to the group and tried to put into words what paramotoring in Baja meant to us. A toast was made, and more tacos and tequila were consumed before calling it a night. It was time to beach hop once again, and we headed to a really neat spot near La Ventana. We had a blast exploring the beach on one wheels, but I just knew it'd be even better from above. Yo! Blasting off once again. I couldn't resist the candy cane colored lighthouse nearby, so I darted in that direction before coming up on a group of Baja Banditos. They showed their appreciation of the butt fan with a little mooning action of their own. Apparently that was a thing down here, because we definitely witnessed a full moon on more than one occasion. I kind of just followed the jagged rocky cliffs down the shore for a while, scanning the horizon for any interesting marine life. This was a pretty common theme for most of my flights in Baja, but as I flew, something inland caught my eye. I spotted an old abandoned resort that had its tile roof crumbling away, and decided to go in for a closer inspection. This was one of those risk-reward scenarios that went in my favor. I joked with my friends back home that this was actual footage of me running from the cartel. All joking aside, I understood the stakes at hand. There wasn't much room for error, but I pulled it off and cemented this legendary flight in time. We swirled around the lighthouse a few more times and practiced some foot drags with my old propeller that already had about 2 years worth of sandblasting on it. Just a little foreshadowing, it didn't have much life left, and I found myself cue-bonding it back together after every other flight. A steady breeze made doing touch and goes almost too effortless. I was loving every second of the wide open white sand beaches and knew this place already had a little special sauce sprinkled on top. And just when I thought things were getting good, it got even better. We floated past the mirror like salt evaporation ponds as the sky began to absolutely burst with color.
Wrong places. I could be missing on you, with all of this dreaming. I better chase this ghost before it leaves me. I can feel your warmth, my eyes go into hiding. I could be looking for you, in all the wrong.
Just me and my motor, a Mexican beach, and a few good friends. I had managed to escape reality entirely, and it felt like I was floating through a dream.
Take me away to safer ground.
It seemed almost too good to be true as I lined things up to land. I was once the guy on the ground staring up at these flying machines. They are pretty majestic after all, and sometimes it's a good feeling to just stare up at your friends, soaking it up from the sky.
I need to keep running until I come to see your face in the corner of my radar. I could be looking for you, in all the wrong places. I could be missing on you, with all of this dreaming.
That's awesome.
We'd found the perfect paramotor paradise, and I think we could have just stayed in this spot forever if we didn't come up with more crazy plans for the following morning.
My eyes go into hiding.
By some luck, we ran into more paramotor pilots, Caesar and Gador, who also happened to be a marine biologist with access to a boat.
I could be missing on you.
They shot us the invite to go swim with humpback whales in the morning. I'd never really been snorkeling, or been on a boat in the ocean at all for that matter, but this Kansas kid was ready to dive in head first. Baja was shaping up to be one wild coincidence after another, and opportunities were popping up left and right. The next morning, I woke up to a belly flop competition held by a group of mobile arrays, and decided to go for a beachside jog before heading out in search of humpbacks. Once we were geared up and ready to go, we hit the jackpot and came across our first whale within 5 minutes of leaving the marina. I'd seen whales spouting from a distance before, but I'd never seen anything quite like this.
What is he doing?
My day would have been made if all we got to do was sit on the boat and watch them, but it was time to test the water temps. Once we were in the water, we had about 2 seconds of watching them swim past us before they vanished into a bubbly abyss. I'd never realized just how fast these massive mammals can swim. Visibility wasn't great, and I didn't manage to capture any epic underwater footage, probably because I was too busy bombing Rob's epic underwater footage. We spent almost all day on the water, and this was hands down one of the most fun and unique experiences of Baja for me. We snagged some food and drinks and talked about fly camping to an island that night, but weather wasn't cooperating, so we decided to beach hop somewhere a little more inviting, if you have 4-wheel drive at least. By the time I yanked Joe out of the sand, it was getting too dark to fly, but anxious to explore our new beach, I remembered the super bright headlamp I had packed, and a literal light bulb went on over my head. Cruising the beach at night with a headlamp somehow worked out a million times better than I ever thought it would, And just like that, another legendary flight was in the Baja books. We didn't waste an ounce of daylight, and another campfire debrief was in order, and we planned out a nice long cross-country flight to a lighthouse for the morning. It was a glorious new day, the sun was shining, and the wind was nil. I didn't really know where I was going, I just knew eventually I'd run into a lighthouse. My only objective was to enjoy everything in between.
Now you're my everything, I was on me. I missed a lot of love with a lot of drugs that I found you. She liked petty crime, she had green eyes like Mountain Dew. And where she go, I'll never know, her friends bounce to. I guess if they're lost, but they'll never know what we'll amount to. And would you be my light, be my yellow? PYT walking down Portobello, put a smile on his face at the end of the day. MDMA helped us fly away. Who'da known you would save my life? Who'da known?
It seemed like the further south we went, the more people there were. The tacos became more delicious, and the margaritas were even colder. Being in a more populated area can be good or bad, but everyone near Los Barillas seemed pretty excited to see our gliders cruising the beach. The water itself on this flight was probably the clearest, most beautiful water I had encountered so far, and once I arrived at the lighthouse, I unclipped, darted to the water, and dove right in. Rob and Joe followed suit and came into land behind me so we could check out the lighthouse. We sat on the beach and planned out the rest of our day, and eventually I went back up to blow dry my salty hairdo. Eventually, we decided to head back, and Rob realized he might not have enough gas in the tank to get there. So, we beelined back to the campsite while the overhead sun brought the turquoise water to life. Although we didn't have much gas to spare, we still took the time to say hello to the locals, and got a few wingtip bumps in along the way. We flew and flew, and the higher the sun rose, the clearer the water became. Clear enough you could see mobula rays, and even a pod of dolphins came to say hello, before landing safe and sound, with just fumes of fuel remaining in the tank. Next, I decided to go for a jog down the beach to find a place to fly for tacos that afternoon. I helped push a few cars out that were stuck in the sand to build some good karma, and Rob and I got dressed to the nines for our fancy feast.
We're ready to fly.
We enjoyed the high winds that made for a graceful landing. A shady spot just beneath our table was the perfect place to park the paramotors and order tacos. But apparently Joe didn't get the memo.
Give me a thumbs up there.
And ended up ordering, well, whatever that is. The policia showed up, and Rob took off on his Luna like some kind of lunatic. Just kidding. They were just there for a show, and it felt kind of cool getting an official policia escort back into the air. With a full belly, the high wind made for an easy launch. I still had room for a dessert, so with my bird's eye view, I spotted a Mexican barbecue and swooped in. I kited my wing while a lady wrapped a chicken leg in napkins and handed it to me, and took back off like some kind of seagull. This is arguably the best way to experience Mexican cuisine. To put it in 2023 terms, we were just out here living our best life, and determined that my pineapple-decorated getup unleashed my alter ego known as Loco Luke. From a night flight, to a lighthouse, to dolphins, tacos, and swiping some in-flight chicken, the past 24 hours had been pretty unreal. Although the wind was still pretty strong, it was also pretty laminar, and I dedicated the final flight of that day to communicating with the locals.
Talk to me, I love that sound.
It was a Saturday night, and everyone at the beach was having a good time, myself included. Dropping in next to lively groups of people resulted in some pretty priceless reactions, but most of all, I just wanted to spread the joy of flight, and seeing the positive impact we made across the beach was really the cherry on top for Las Barillas. The bar we flew to for tacos earlier that day was packed with people, and more people kept showing up to hang out on the sand. I couldn't help but laugh as I raced some kids down the beach nearby, and I continued down the coast as the sun started to set. As I was saying, this flight was all about communicating with the locals. I was handing out free hola amigos like I was Oprah Winfrey at this point, and I had to have done 100 touch and goes on this one flight alone. This rowdy group of gals on a UTV were enjoying the paramotor, so I decided to give them a closer look at my flying machine. I don't know who was more excited in the moment, to be honest. They were awesome sports about me joining in on their evening ride, and I'll admit, it might have made my night too. Rob and Joe appeared out of nowhere, and we frolicked through the sky for one last evening hurrah in Las Barillas.
On a high, go around, lift me from the ground. Lift me from the ground.
I noticed an elderly couple filming us, so I figured I'd give them a better view also. Their reaction was adorable, and as much as I didn't want to come down, I noticed Rob kiting his wing on the ground and came in to wingtip bump him as I landed, which naturally started a mini kiting war to end one of the most epic days of flying in Baja. Baja had been smooth sailing. As much fun as we were having at each beach, the next location kept getting better the further south we traveled. So I couldn't wait to hit the road once again and see just what kind of legendary adventures we could uncover the next day.